Morena, everybody. Welcome. I'm looking around, make sure everybody's in attendance. We do. Sorry, I just seem to be off target here. We'll get words of wisdom. Let's go. No, hang on, stop. No, stop. Can we start with an opening karakia? Have we got Cassidy in the room, or do we? Yeah, mate.
Morena koutou, tēnā koe te koromato, tira koutou ngā kaikaunihira o Ōtorohanga, e mihi ana kia koutou, kia kare kia tātou. E pape rangi. Tauwhire te o mai he manaakitanga he ata whaitanga ki runga ki a tātou, ki runga ki tēnei whakaminenga e hui nei e karakia nei. Tau iho mai ngā manaakitanga o te wahingaro ki runga ki a tātou, ai no ki a rātou e mauiwitea kei ngā hohi pera o te motu i tēnei wā. Kia piki te ora, kia piki te kaha, kia pai ai te huarahi kei mui a tātou, tūturo a whiti whakamaua kia tīna haumi e, hui e, ai ki e. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Cassidy. Okay, moving on to the words of wisdom. Councillor Tamaki.
Morena te whare. Only too grateful to do words of wisdom today. So reflecting on the spaces and time that we move in within our everyday lives, a little pao whakatauki haka came to mind. So taku patu, Māori mana mutu hake, taku ihi, taku wana, taku ro pū haka. So ihi is reference to preservation around moving into the spaces that we need to make decisions today. And wihi, transformation, let's make them best practice so they make permanent and we have better outcomes for our community. And wana is activation. Let's activate ourselves to have a great hui, but also activate ourselves to make some brave changes within our practice that we walk in today. Taku ro pūhaka anei. Kei konei te whare, taku ro pūhaka. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you, Councillor Tamaki. Okay, today we've received apologies from two councillors that have been accepted at this stage, and we've got a further apology from Councillor Willison. I'd like to move that his apology be accepted. Do we have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Christensen. All in favour? Against? Carried. Are there any late items in the agenda? None that I'm aware of. Moving on to a declaration of conflict of interest. Are there any councillors that need to declare a conflict or feel they should declare a conflict of interest in anything on today's agenda? Okay, thank you. Confirmation of minutes. First off, the confirmation minutes of the Ōtorohanga District Council dated 21st March 2023. Do I move in a second for those, please? Move Councillor Tamaki, second Councillor Johnson. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Any matters arising from those minutes? Moving on to receipt of minutes of the Ōtorohanga Community Board dated 3rd of April. Do I move in a second for those? I do this occasionally. Surname Councillor Hughes. Move Councillor Hughes. Second Councillor Christensen. All in favour? Thank you, Steve. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Move on to the receipt of the minutes of the Kawhia Community Board dated 5th of March 2023. I'll move that those be received. Seconded. Councillor Prendergast. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Before I go into my verbal report, while we've got Emma sitting in the back of the room there, you have some introductions to make this morning. Good morning. Awesome, good to see you. Welcome. Kia ora. See you later. Moving on to my mayoral report for May.
Graham will introduce Kathy.
Oh, sorry. Yep, good call. Sorry, Graham. I was looking at Kathy there and didn't think much of it, to be honest. It's too much of a familiar face. Graham, please.
I'd just like to introduce Carol, she started last week. Which we desperately needed, and Kathy comes from Waipa District Council after spending over 30 years there, with a long period of PA to the mayor. So Kathy, I guess almost felt like she was coming home when she started last week. There were so many ex-Waipa staff here that she walked around the room and it was a lot of familiar faces. So we're really excited to have Kathy on board. She's already sorted out Mark's calendar, so he's in his emails, so he's excited. Andrew and I we're fine, but so do you want to say something?
Sorry, really love to meet. Really excited about starting my journey here.
Welcome, Kathy. It's good having you here. Right, moving on to my mayor's report for the last month. Only a few bullet points, not saying that I didn't do anything, but these are just outside of the ordinary stuff. Attended introduction of the community board training on the 20th of last month, followed by a Zoom with the Mayor of Kawerau. Went to the Waikato Mayoral Forum workshop on the 21st. Anzac Day ceremonies in Ōtorohanga and Kawhia on the 25th. An iwi engagement hui on the 26th. 4th of May, I attended the Kawhia Community Board Zoom, board meeting via Zoom. Thanks to Councillor Christensen, we had a coronation tree planting on the 6th. Now I have a monthly interview with Maniapoto FM in the mornings that there's on the 9th. And then Tanya Ross and I met with Kyle Barnes energy initiatives for council going forward. And then we had a Zoom hui with Ngati Oakau and Te Patupo. Listening to their historic grievances out of Aotea, which is quite sobering in some respects, and it was really nice for them to be able to air their grievances and feel comfortable airing their grievances with the council. So we had a number of us in attendance, including Cassidy and Councillor Tamaki and Councillor Williams, and a number of staff. So I'd just like to move that my report be received. Yep, for Councillor Dow, second to Councillor Hughes. All in favour? Against? Any questions? Thank you, councillors. Public forum, nobody for public forum today. No, thank you. Moving on to decisions reports, item 42, consideration of Ōtorohanga Support House request for increased funding and the long-term lease of 88 Maniapoto Street. Nadia. Welcome, Nadia. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Morena, councillors. Right, so this report is to support the request by the Ōtorohanga Support House for increased funding and lease term to support their continued operation at 88 and 120 Maniapoto Street in Ōtorohanga. It's a near verbatim report for what went before the Ōtorohanga Community Board last night, asking for a recommendation to council for your consideration today. The recommendation made aligns to the staff recommendation in number 3 of the report. Now, the report's fairly comprehensive at 12 plus pages. Myself and Graham have met with the Support House Chair and Treasurer to better understand their financial position, which has been reflected in 4.31. And hence, Graham joining me at the table today, should you have any further questions. Given that the Ōtorohanga Community Board has considered this report at length, we're quite happy to take it as read and any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Nadia. Councillors, any questions or leaving it over to me? So just a question, we're going through there, we had a discussion yesterday, we just need some clarification on it. There's a number of us who had our councillor catch up in the afternoon and went and just asked a question and legal advice. Just up there on the lease agreement, it goes that we're talking quite openly about the 3-year lease and the desire to have a 3+2. And it said that the +2 was purely at the lessee's discretion. Yeah, lessee's discretion. But in terms of a lease extension, that is up to anybody, be it the landlord or the tenant, to determine whether that goes ahead. So we're just saying it, so it can be at the discretion of the landlord to extend it, because the question, we've got one councillor that says, hey, I just want to give them 5 years, and we're saying that the those buildings were bought with the Ōtorohanga community concept plan being a part of it, and we wanted to determine what the future potentially was before we did a 5-year extension. So I seem to be going around the corners here a wee bit, but in part A, we've got the Ōtorohanga District Council and staff recommendation agrees to a 3-year lease with Ōtorohanga Support House for the exclusive use of 88 and 120. Could we add on to that A with the extension that can be given by the landlord for a further 2 years if we so choose? So if we saw a couple of years down the track that the community concept plan says, hey, there's no desire for the community to be in that building, we can just give that extension at the 3 years. Is that? Sorry, I went around in circles.
No, that's right, Your Worship. I may need to ask for advice here from our property advisor, Trish. But one thing that the council might want to consider is that we're doing a feasibility study, and that is kicking off quite shortly. That's going to take 12 months, possibly a little bit less, at which point we will know from the community whether that strategic asset is fit for purpose or the right position for a multi-purpose community facility, at which point I feel like there's 2 scenarios. So one scenario, it's not the right location for that, and then council and the Ōtorohanga Community Board will have a decision to make around the future of that premise, whether we retain it for its current purpose or a different purpose, or whether we actually sell it because it no longer fits the purpose for which we purchased the property. So if that happens in 12 months, then I guess for consideration by council and the community board is whether we enter into longer term leases or whether we sell the property. And then,
Thanks, Nadia.
so I'm just, I guess, sorry, if I may, I'm just not sure what a 3+2 year lease would do that the 3-year lease won't do.
Yeah, Brisbane. Yeah.
Oh.
Thanks. As no, that one's not. As you know, yesterday I spoke to this about why it was important for 3 years, and the community would come back and say what, you know, with the feasibility study, what that property could be or could not be used for. My feeling is the 3 plus the landlord's right to extend for another 2 is that if our feasibility study is done in 12 months and it will come to community board, if it wasn't needed for the town concept plan, it would come back to community board about, like you just talked about, selling or whatever. But I believe that if we're going to know in 12 months for funding for the support house, if they knew in 12 months that they could have an extension of 2 years, they're better equipped for funding. I know that we spoke yesterday about they're happy with 3 years, but to be fair, 5 years would be more ideal for them. And we can write, as the landlord, we can get a lawyer to write any terms in our lease agreement. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Through Your Worship,
Council can make any decision you want. Okay, let's be perfectly clear about this. You want to give the support house 10 years. This is our advice. Our advice to you, while balancing both your desires to be flexible around the Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan, while also trying to give the support house the security they need to secure their funding. This is our professional recommendation. But by all means, if you want to do something different, we will make that happen. Okay, so yeah.
Excellent,
Thank
Tanya.
you.
Just on that then, let's going to Katrina's point, let's say a decision was made in 12 months' time that there wasn't going to be used for anything other than the support house, there's no desire. We could write a new lease right at that moment, couldn't we? 4 or 5 years right then.
We could, but I still feel for funders, like they might get some funding comes in for the next 12 months and then the next 12 months. But you know how I feel. I've got advice on it, and as the landlord, we can write anything in our lease agreements.
Thoughts, councillors?
Can I just, we've just agreed minutes where I actually, and in it is, I asked Greta, whether it's the chairperson of the support house, whether 5 years would be preferable, but she said yes. I think this new, giving an agreement of an extra extension of 2 years, it ticks the boxes for both. So the support house gets a bit of certainty that it could be a 5-year term, but it also helps the other side of the community have got time to decide. So if they do decide, we can chop it off at 3 years. So it's just an agreement. They might not even agree to the agreement because it's got to be an agreement between both of us. It's not really an automatic right of renewal. It's just an agreement that we're not going through this whole process again if we agree. So I think a 3 + 2 is the way to go. It ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I think for any lessee, longer term is better for securing funding or for staffing or whatever reasons. So yeah, I agree too with an extra term for them, but any agreement can be changed by agreement. And if we needed that block of land, we could approach them, and if there was some other place for them, that we could facilitate that. So I have no problem with them having a longer term lease. Yeah, so now that's me. Yeah.
Okay, just to go on what Councillor Dowell was saying, and he's been advocate for from the beginning, and the support house has said they want the assurance to go to funders that there's a possibility that there's 5 years ahead of them. So if we did the 3 or the +2, which was our decision on terms of that right of extension, as opposed to solely in the hands of the leasee making that decision. Councillor is comfortable with that. So I'll hand over you, Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just perhaps change a word here? We're not giving a longer term lease, we are giving them the opportunity of the possibility.
Yes. So they get a three-year term, and we're part of that decision whether we extend it for another 2 years or not. So it'll be written into it that we have the right to make that decision of the extension, not at the hands of the lessee to make that decision.
And we don't have to give a reason, that's just legally the way it is.
I think yesterday when I spoke to it, Greta was in here, and she would have understood yesterday that it's actually will be the community that decides after 3 years, because it's part of the TCP, and if the community wanted a community facility there, then of course council's not going to renew it for that other 2 years.
The other thing too is just to write in the notice period, for their security, so that if we were going to change, they had suitable notice period for other to find other accommodation, whether it's even 12 months ahead, whether we signal things won't be moving that fast, but the lease would come to an end. So
Thank you, councillor.
I have a draft
Cool.
resolution if you'd like me to read it out, your worship.
Would love you to.
So we've just amended number one to say agrees to a 3-year lease with the Ōtorohanga Support House for the exclusive use of 88 and 120 Maniapoto Street from the 1st of July 2023 to 30th of June 2026, with a 2-year extension to be given at the landlord's discretion. Now, we've deliberately not said town concept plan, etc., because then some other thing might happen, and we've got the discretion. All right, just checking with our property manager that is something that can be lawfully included in a lease, so that I'm not getting this the stare across the table.
A right of renewal is exactly that, the right to renew for a leasee, not for the landlord. You might as well just give them a 5-year lease with a termination. All our leases, by the way, have termination clause, whether politicians of the day will be brave enough to exercise it. But you might as well just give them a 5-year lease with a termination clause.
No, I disagree.
I like the wording of the resolution because you've avoided the words right of renewal, which is a legal term for giving a leasee the right to renew. So
Yeah, thanks, Trish. The other thing for me is this sounds more positive. I understand the legalese around what you're suggesting, but to me, it's all about termination, early termination. Whereas this for me is 3 years security plus discretion for an extension. I don't know, it might just be
Totally
language, but that's.
I think the 3-year certainty is a big part of it. Having a 5-year contract with a termination clause in there is just, I mean, it means that it could be finished in a year. So I think the assurance of 3 years with the possibility of 2-year
No,
further extension.
Sorry, through your worship. Also, it's not a right of renewal, it's an extension at the discretion of the landlord, and it's a legal term. Also, if we were going to do this, I think there needs to be an amendment to C too, because if they got an extra 2 years, they would need to apply for extra funding for the rent costs.
Yeah, sorry, just to run that by me again. So what would you suggest 3 needs to change to?
Scribbled on that bit of paper. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, I think we wrap it up in the long-term plan.
Yeah, I don't think this.
I don't know. I would be asking for direction here. Maybe we include it in this resolution here around signalling that with further funding to be
I think
considered through the long-term plan. Is that all right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think we did that with another one recently. So yeah. Okay.
And
We're
Trish,
working
not
there.
to tear the report apart, it was a great report. Thank you. It is probably just, we want the positivity around, probably just a bit of comfort for the support house to know there is a possibility for the extension, but a positive rhetoric around there. There's been certain, I suppose, unspoken desire from the support house to have that extension. So you don't mean to tear it apart, just looking for a real positive way forward on this.
yeah, through you, your chair, I just wanted to clarify, we've just adopted a new lease policy. We're standardizing how we manage leases, so they're not awarded on ad hoc basis. So that will include lease templates. Now, all of our lease templates will have, because it's public land, a termination clause for the landlord to exercise their right for terminating any lease if it's deemed that there's a better public use for the land than the current lease. So I just don't want to raise, I'm just pointing that out. I didn't expect it to be in the resolution, but I just wanted to manage expectations in the room that that clause will be in there in a standard lease agreement as it will with all our other leases. Just so you know that a lease, you can go into a term for 10, 15, 20 years, but that clause still remains, that there is the opportunity to exercise that if needed.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Trish.
Through you, your worship. I'm just probably for clarity, if there's templates for leases, because this one's unique, it's the only one that is tied up in a feasibility study for the TCP. I actually think it needs to be looked at probably by a lawyer. It's not just a template lease. It's unique, this situation.
I think, if we were going on the policy on that we okayed, which was just in what we've in the minutes, that would actually qualify for a 5-year lease. So we're actually backtracking on our policy anyway. So, but I think this is a very good helps with the concept plan as well as so to me, it gives Bob both made used to say in the old days.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors? Nothing further to add? No? No, Cool.
So through you, your worship, so resolution C now reads, notes that this extra funding has been included in the 2023-24 annual plan, with further funding to be considered in the long-term plan 2024 to 2034.
Thank you. So do you want to read all those three up now that we've got them? We're quite happy.
Read them out again.
Breeze, start from the beginning. Thank you, Tom.
Sorry, client. Agrees to a 3-year lease with the Ōtorohanga Support House for the exclusive use of 88 and 120 Mania Porter Street from 1st of July 2023 to 30th of June 2026, with a 2-year extension to be given at landlord's discretion. B, agrees to fund the additional cost $17,000 a year associated with the lease of 88 Mania Porter Street for a period of 3 years, making the total grant for the council $36,000. And C, notes that this extra funding has been included in the 2023-24 annual plan, with further funding to be considered in the long-term plan 24 to 34.
Thank you, Tanya. Keep that all in your heads, people, because we haven't even discussed the $17,000 a year increased funding. Is everybody in a happy place with that, or there needs to be discussion around it?
I'll move that, what you just read out.
Okay, so thank you. So we've had the staff recommendations moved by councillor Dow, seconded by councillor Christensen. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks
Thank you,
very
your
much.
worship, councillors.
We've got there. Moving on to item 43, local Easter Sunday shop trading policy 2017 review. Andrew.
Thank you, your worship, councillors. I'll assume that my report's been read. In summary, council adopted a Easter Sunday shop trading policy back in 2017. This policy is subject to statutory review after a period of 5 years. The staff recommendation is that council continue with this policy without change, and I'm here today to seek council approval for a statement of proposal to go out as part of the special consultative process to gather public comment and submissions on that stance. So at the moment, our Easter Sunday shop trading policy allows shops all through Ōtorohanga district to open for trading on Easter Sunday.
Thank you, Andrew.
Take any questions.
Good report. Good decision made in 2017. About putting bias on things. Any discussion, councillor? Otherwise, we've got the staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council review the local Easter Sunday shop trading policy with a view to continuing the existing policy without change, and B, approve the statement proposed in public consultation in accordance with the special consultative process of the Local Government Act. I'd like to move that. Seconded. Councillor Hughes, all in favour? Against? Carried.
Okay, just to give you a bit of a brief on what happens from here. The period of consultation runs for a minimum of 28 days, so won't be able to report back on this with any submissions until the July meeting. And then following the July meeting, whatever the decision of the council at that stage, whether it's to continue with the policy or revoke it, or change it, we then report the outcome of that council decision back to the minister, and then come back in 5 years' time if we still have policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, moving on to item 44, which is the Ōtorohanga Rural Concept Plan, Community Advisory Group Confirmation Membership and Adjustment to Geographic Scope. Welcome, Ross.
Morena Koto. So thank you, Worship. I'll take the report as read, but I do want to just touch on a couple of things. So there's been a little chopping and changing around the nominations for the advisory group membership. So adding Nick Riley, Bev Bailey, David and/or Alison Sellers, and unfortunately Fiona Scott has had to withdraw. So she has other things that have come up, but I have indicated in the report the ability to co-opt additional members. So if the Ōtorohanga town concept plan process is anything to go by, we will have people kind of coming and going from that advisory group, which I think is a natural thing to expect. So if those additional names can be added into the resolution and Fiona's name taken out, that would be great. And then just the final point in the recommendation is around the geographic scope of both the Ōtorohanga rural and Kawhia Aotea concept plan areas, just to provide a bit of certainty for those involved in the process. So for Kawhia Aotea, the suggestion is, and this was considered and supported by the Kawhia Community Board at their recent meeting, and that is the area of consideration includes Kawhia Harbour, Waparau Community and Aotea Harbour. And then the balance not covered by the Ōtorohanga urban area would fall within the Ōtorohanga rural concept plan area. I can circulate a map in the near future if people are, and we'll be using that map, would like that. I think it's important to note that if there are things that are raised, say within the rural concept plan process that relate to Kawhia Aotea, we will carry them across and vice versa. So again, like the Ōtorohanga town concept plan, any ideas, thoughts, concerns, issues, opportunities that come up, we will make sure that they are captured and then fed into either the right plan, or if they sit outside the concept plan process, into a different process. And just noting that the first meeting of the advisory group is Thursday of this week, and we're running in the afternoon a mana whenua hui as well. So we'll have the Becca team here for that. So very much looking forward to that. And just to note that I did agree, or it was suggested and agreed that we will make sure that you as elected members, and I guess it applies to the Kawhia Community Board as well, are kept informed as to when these meetings and sessions are being held. They are for the benefit of the advisory group or the working groups, as the case may be. So the sessions aren't closed to elected members, but they are principally for advisory group and working group members. And just while I've got the floor, Your Worship, we've settled on Saturday the 3rd of June for the first community drop-in session. That's at Kawhia, covering that plan. We are working on a date for the rural drop-in session. At this stage, it will be in June, probably at the end of June. Regarding location and timing, we'll take the opportunity when we're talking to the advisory group on Thursday to get guidance from them as to where they see that session being best located. It may be here in Ōtorohanga, it might be somewhere else, but we'll take that guidance. And then, like the Kawhia drop-in session, we'll start communicating that widely. So happy to take any questions around any of that, Your Worship.
Through you, Your Worship. Ross, just a question regarding the co-opting of members. Did you want those names now? Because I've got one, but if you want it, better just be back to did you want it in the resolution?
Through you, Worship, can I just ask a question, because Kaya and I are trying to work out how we can do this. if this is a group that's going to be fluid with people coming and going, are we going to name the people in the resolution?
Yes, so we've done that with the Kawhia Aotea group. So that's come through, and so the community have some certainty, I guess, or knowledge around
Right.
who's on the advisory group, because part of the process is for these people to also talk and engage within their own community. So
it's just really noting a core group of the membership and then obviously other co-operative.
yes, yeah. Bailey,
And Ellison / David Sellers.
yes, thank you.
And sounds like there's more others
Well,
that can. Council members.
And the removal of
No.
Fiona's
Wells, you and
The line is Dave Bennett.
anything further, Ross?
No, thank you.
Any questions, councillors? Thank you. Thanks for the work you've put in to get us to this stage. Very good, and looking forward to hearing what the feedback is from these members.
Thank you, Worship. We're just at the start line.
Yes, you are just at the start line.
And just noting, your worship, that the Kawhia public meeting day is King's birthday. King's birthday weekend, okay? Yeah, so we had a lot of feedback, if you recall, from some of our Kawhia community board members about our long-term plan process and that we didn't engage on holiday weekends. Well, now staff are moving the ocean, moving the Kawhia harbour to be out there in order to meet with people. So if you can join them, because sorry, I won't be there, then that would be lovely.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks, Ross. So we have the staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council confirm the following as members of the Community Advisory Group for the Ōtorohanga Rural Concept Plan. I won't read the names out. We have those already on the resolution. B, note that other members of the rural community will be co-opted onto the Rural Advisory Group. And C, note that the Ōpōrau District and matters related to Kawhia and Aotea harbours will be considered as part of the Kawhia Aotea Concept Plan. So I move for a second of those, please. Move Councillor Tamaki, second Councillor Johnson, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Ross. Right, moving on to item 45, consultation draft interim speed management plan for the Ōtorohanga District. Richard, welcome.
Morning, your worship and councillors. How are you all? So interim speed management plan. So the stage we're up to is consultation. So I've brought Rachel along here. She's done the lion's share of work in this space. We're ready to go out to public and get some feedback. So Rachel's got a bit of a timeline that we need to work towards to get the whole interim speed management plan across the line and meet our requirements set out by central government, which is the schools, the maraes. So I'll hand you over to Rachel. She'll give us a bit of a rundown on just the timeline that we're looking forward to hopefully undertaking some consultation. And from that, if you guys have any questions, happy to field them.
Really short and sweet. Basically, we hope to go out if it's agreed upon on the 1st of June and for a month, and then have any hearings on the 18th of July. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, a few questions. Obviously, this speed management plan for Ōtorohanga District is primarily focused on schools and marae, if I'm correct. But we seem to have stuck a few other roads in there. The rationale, probably for me, is, you know, that I travel from Te Kawa West down to Ōtorohanga every day. Ōtowhero Road is the one that I travel on. Like, I'd really love to know why we're consulting on Ōtowhero Road, or the rationale behind the distances from the town boundary. I drove it yesterday just to get a check on where those spacings are. And the reason I'm asking that is because if we go back about a month, we had contractors putting up a 50K sign without consultation outside, and then within a day it had to get pulled down again, as Mark well knows. To me, when I drove into town, I thought, hey, this is an ideal place for dropping the speed to 50 kilometres an hour. Totally got it. It's a built-up area. The footpath finished there. It made sense. What we're proposing to go out to consult on makes no sense to me. Can you please explain?
Yep, no, so that's really the benefit of consultation, is to get that feedback as well. So we've got Ōtorohanga and Old Tikawiti Road. So Old Tikawiti Road is more of a legalisation process and just tying the loop. Currently, it hasn't been gazetted yet, so we have to go through that process to tie that one in. So we've got Ōtorohanga and Huipatia Drive, those two that we've added in for a consultation. We've had a lot of interest through service requests come in from public. So it's something we wanted to put out there and say, hey, how many people are actually interested? And if there was a change, what would it look like? What would it mean to you? So if the feedback comes back and we're not interested, then absolutely that's something that we can process with and go, right, not now. Not, yeah, people aren't interested in that, but it seemed to, a bit of a learning from my side from council. We are the RCA, so Road Controlling Authority, and traditionally we would have access and availability to make any changes we wanted to at any time. We don't have that anymore. So it has to go through the minister, and so the only times that we are able to change posted speed limits are through interim speed management plans. This is one of them. We're not too sure when the next one will come up, so it's a good opportunity to take those two items that come up through service requests and through public interest to just approach it and see how we go from there.
Richard, Ōtorohanga Road, 100 to between 60 and 80, that is the dropping of the speed limit coming into town. So, or are we proposing to drop the speed limit on the whole of Ōtorohanga Road? Yeah. Okay.
Just
So I'm unclear on your question.
Well, driving out there yesterday, so I get coming out of town that we could extend the 50K limit out of town for the 700 metres, I think is about the end of the footpath, if I'm correct. But now we're proposing going 1.25 Ks out at a lower speed limit. Then we go another 1.25 Ks at a different speed limit, which I don't see the rationale or the benefit from my own driving in there each day. I get it when we're in a built up area, but I don't get why we're adding that extra bit on.
Yes. No worries. So for on our first attempt, we try to put it under what we call a temporary speed limit. So it has to, when we install the signs here, you have to meet certain sight distances or certain distances. So you've got like a little table that goes, what's your posted speed? What are you proposing to change it to? What's your visibility? And that kind of gives you a gauge on how far you have to have each sign spread. So that's where that comes from.
For clarification for the councillors and myself, so we go out for public consultation. The public come back and say, hey, this is fantastic. Or they say, no, this is nonsense. The decision is still up to the council to determine what we do with that feedback from the consultation, correct?
Yes, correct. So we'll get all that information posted into our draft plan where you guys will review, have an opportunity to make any amendments. The only ones that realistically can't be changed are the schools. That's what it's.
So the school one is, so it's not even really consultation, it's really just notifying the public this is what's going to happen. That'd be fair.
Yes, between Rachel and myself, we're quite interested in generating additional work, which might come out of safety improvements around schools. So it might not be particularly speed driven. It might be, hey, we'd really like a pedestrian crossing here. It's not part of this plan, but we can take that information, hopefully put it into another 4 weeks plan.
And with that feedback that comes back and we decide to either go with it or against it, or we can still do our own bespoke solution or not, or does that have to go out for, let's say it was rejected, the proposed, sorry, going back on one road I know so well, if it was say overwhelming opinion that we didn't want that, can the council still make a bespoke decision to go with where the original sign was put up that had to get taken down again, or does that need another consultant process?
And I think, if we get overwhelming feedback that says, yes, go for it, and if we present to you guys, and if you say we're not interested, that's your guys' decision to make.
But can we still make a bespoke decision in terms of changing some?
I want to help you out, your worship.
Please do.
This is a statement of proposal essentially that this council needs to agree on before we go out to public consultation. So if this council feels that they don't want to do the 60 and then the 80, it's within their rights to do that, isn't it? Or is there some land transport legislation that says, no, you must have the graduated 60 to 80? I'm thinking this is your statement of proposal. So a bit like Easter trading and other things that you are going out on, yes, there's legislation and we need to make sure that we are in keeping with that. But I'm wondering if you feel strongly enough that the 60 and the 80 on Ōtorohanga, say we take that as an example, is not what you want, can you go out and consult? Can council go out and consult? And I'm looking at Mark and you, Richard and Rach, on just 60 to 100 or 50 to 100.
So if I may, if I can speak, it's my understanding is that this is the speeds that have sort of been given as guidance for you when you do a staggered or staged approach to change a speed zone. Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong. So what we're trying to avoid is 100 kilometres an hour to 50 kilometres an hour, because the reality will be is you will glide, you will go right up to that 50 kilometre an hour sign at 100 and glide through the 50. So we're trying to stagger that out. So I suppose it's putting a peg in the ground and saying, this is what we'll go out to the community with. I understand what you're saying, Tony, is can we put a more of a bespoke around there, maybe a 70? I would have to dig a bit deeper into the.
No, what I'm saying, thanks, Mark. What I'm saying is, can we stick with exactly what we've got? 50 to 100, but we move the 50 out to capture those, because that's what the discussion was from memory at the start. There's a whole bunch of houses along that kind of straight that we thought, let's push the 50 out and start the 100 at the end of that kind of straight. So is that an option for council to do, or do we have to follow what's in some legislative guidance framework thing?
Yeah, there is a design guide on what's a preferred treatment. So Rachel's working quite closely with other speed management engineers and Wakakotahi on what's a good design. And this is what we've kind of got at the moment. Provides consistency throughout our district and neighbouring districts. But if there is an alternative design that comes back from consultation that gets raised, and we should look at, and we can talk to Wakakotahi and our contacts here and say, is this fit for purpose? Can we make this fit?
So that's my, again, I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah,
So like, if the community comes back and goes, this is nonsense, what the hell are you trying to do? You've got this low speed way out in the country. So the community feedback is no. Then does the council have a choice to make a bespoke decision that we say, okay, let's go with that 50k sign 700 meters out from town, or do we have to go back and consult on that? See, this is the fear we have. We go out for something which to me seems somewhat ridiculous, and then it gets overwhelmingly rejected. Then we're in a position where we're actually no better off than where we are now. Where a common sense approach would be, we could do 50k, 700 meters out where the footpath finishes. We drive into towns everywhere where it goes 100 to 50. And if you want to do that cruising in, you do it at your own peril, because the cop's sitting right inside the boundary there. Yeah, you're in serious trouble of being 50 kilometers an hour over a speed limit. So I get where you're coming from, Mark, but people do tend to cruise, but at your own peril, should you get that, you know what that speed limit is. I'm just think that we'll see overwhelming rejection of this proposal, and then we're in a position where we've got a 50k boundary where it currently is. So
yeah, I think to bring this back in, this process is looking at consultation itself. So there's a good things that might come out of consultation, or it might not. But at this stage, we want to still proceed through with the process and see what comes out of it.
I would like to suggest a timeout.
Yeah.
I would like to suggest that I have time to just talk with my staff around what this means. All right,
Cool.
so are we able
Well,
to
June,
please
June
do
for 10
that
minutes. Councillors will reconvene the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time out there. There'll be some other, okay, so we've gone away that we can make recommendations now in terms of changing what we're proposing going up for consultation, correct?
So do you want me to explain it? Worship?
Please do.
So the question I asked before was around this being council's statement of proposal. So once again, just like in a previous report, you are receiving professional advice on the speed limits, taking into a whole lot of different factors around the road, their location, the built up areas, etc., their use. It is up to you what you adopt for public consultation. All right, so the recommendation for Ōtorohanga is to take the 50k out and stagger it to make it 100, 80, 60. If you want it to be 150, then you can adopt that today, and we will just make that amendment in the resolution. Okay, we go out and consult on it, we get feedback from people, you consider the feedback and you make your final decision. All right.
Thank you, Tanya. And look, both Richard and Rachel, it's a great report. Don't get me wrong. You've done a hell of a lot of work in here, and I really appreciate what you've done. We probably just disagree on a couple of points here in terms of how we get it across the line. And you think 180, 60, 50. And we're talking yesterday about you get on different sections of road around the country, you go, shivers, what speed I'm actually doing on this part of the road. So here, you think 50 at College, 60 just out there, 80 out a bit further, then it's 100. What place am I in? Can I propose, and I'll be looking around the table for support there. At this stage, we're talking about that 700 metres before mark. If that 1.25 kilometres, which was first proposed for the 60, if we put the 50k sign out of 1.25 k's out where it currently is, and just run that out for consultation, see how that goes. I know it's, we have issues of 100 to 50, I get that, but we see it all around the country and we adjust to it and we can adapt accordingly. But it's a clear indication that we want to look after those houses close to town, but once you get out past there, then you're okay. So on work, do I have support around the table for that proposal for consultation?
What we did suggest to your worship was maybe we put the option in the submission form of a staggered approach to see what the public feedback is on that, rather than exclude it completely.
Okay, and that's
Would that
fine,
be
Mark. I
something-
think the issue we had before, and this is what I was asking, if we go with the proposal that's rejected wholeheartedly, where are we left with? We're left with a position where we've got a 50k sign in an inappropriate place.
So I think that's a good middle ground, as we still gauge the community's response on a staggered, and if it's overwhelming, then that might help with the decision process. But at this stage, rather than having a position where we have to try and backtrack later on, or not have the ability to, that I think that's a good way forward.
So Alicia, I'll hand over to Councillor Prendergast because she's got a few questions around placement of signs as well, speed restrictions.
Thank you, Your Worship. My comments are really regarding schools. We're talking about roads, and I agree with you completely with your statement at the beginning. I would have rather this report was in two distinct parts, and that schools were dealt with and then roads were dealt with, because the schools aren't being consulted on, are they? It's a
That's my understanding from what you said to your school. This is just the schools.
There will be an engagement, a direct.
But we have to adopt within the next couple of years in terms of that speed. So is it really consultation or just notification?
Well, yeah, it's a play on words, really, isn't it?
Because our country roads are consultation, aren't they?
So
that's consultation. The schools and Marae are notification.
Because of the mandated speed.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just quickly say what I want to say about schools, and I think you've done a fabulous job. I came past Forestry School at 60 days now this morning, and it felt really good. I would have wanted to see it last year, but it's a school, and that was great. Really like what you're doing with Ōtorohanga, but Ōtorohanga School. But will you consult with the community as to the placing of the signs, because, for example, the hall there is used by the play centre and the school. Throughout here, on a lot of occasions, these children literally cross the road because we use the rugby field on the opposite side of the road. And if I've read what you've said correctly, I think the limited speed sign, 60k sign, needs to be a little bit closer to the main road, just for that reason. The other thing is you have got the possibility of a pedestrian crossing outside the school, which is a great idea. Particularly, and I was just saying this to Vance yesterday, it should have been done when the consent was given for the beach at the farm. That was just added in the last extra traffic. And as you know, there's no visibility here, particularly to Upwich, no visibility at all. So I think that's great, and just concentration on the exact place there, probably.
Yeah, so I suppose the best way to sort of answer that question is once the plan's in place, it goes through a review process every 3 years where we can make changes. But if we want to make minor changes like the placements of signs, that can be done within the current plan. Those sort of little alignment issues we can deal with without having to consult again on placement sign, as long as we've shown that this is the overall picture. Whether that sign moves 100 metres either way, it's not a big deal. So we can step.
So is that in an appendix, Mark, that says that when you go out for consultation, is there a little asterisk there that says that can be moved, or?
I'm not sure. I wish I'd have a look, but it's my understanding is that moving slight little changes within there around alignments and signs, things like that, is not something we would have to go back out for consultation. So we're only on consultation for, I suppose, the overall picture of what we're doing to answer that question.
So it get through the auction. So for example, the flashing light sign that is in existence to the east of the school, where it's placed is if you're going around the corner going east, and with particularly with increased heavy traffic on the road, if you're trying to evade a vehicle, you're going to click the sign, and it has happened once that the sign had to either be completely replaced or remedied somehow. So that needs to just come back towards the school a little bit, and you can't do any excessive speed unless you're not endangering one. But if that could come back, that it would be more effective. Towards the school, if it just comes back around the corner a little bit, it's it's very self-explanatory when you get here. And actually, yes, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Jocelyn, Councillor Dow.
Yeah, just fear of bogging the council meeting down with the little bits of what's happening on these roads. Is there any chance that we could just check with some of our people who live around those areas about the speeds? I'm just thinking about Old Woody Road. I think it's still too fast. It's NVKs. I'd just like to check with them if we got to that stage where we can, before we go to a consultation document, just to preempt that change, or
Sorry to interrupt, with the feedback from the consultation, these such of the locals there, if you talk to them, they gave the feedback and said, hey, 70's too fast, we want to go to 60, that'd be something to be considered.
I'm thinking part of our engagement will be direct with the residents on those affected roads.
as staff elected.
I'm not sure what's planned, but it might be a letterbox drop or a.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to the people who've spoken to me about that particular area, them on board. I'm sure it would just help get this process go through more smoothly.
I think that comes down to a test of how successful our engagement and consultation process would be if we get the message out there. But I think what you're suggesting, Councillor, is maybe some face-to-face door knocks or letter drops to these particular residents. Is that what you were suggesting.
Yeah, well, I just want to encourage them to
Yep.
follow the consultation process, but just what I'd like is that their suggestions are taken on board. Rather than either a yes, we agree, or no, we don't.
Through your worship, yeah. These roads have become roads of concern because of because of the discussions that have been had with the people within those communities. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even been brought up and put into this interim one. They would have been left for a wider one. So yeah, we are in having a lot of conversations with them, but it would be good to have your backup as well.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel. Councillor Dow.
I'm not in favour of lowering the speed limits across all the schools permanently. From like in April, for instance, there was only actually 8 school days. I'm in favour of a variable schools, speed sign, but doing it permanently, they hardly even go to school. Well, they're not open that often. So why penalise everyone every day of the year, 365 days a year, when they're hardly even at school? So I'm dead. Just don't support that at all. It actually, this report's very good and very extensive. And it does show that our drivers are very responsible. Like their mean speeds are all, apart from Rangiatia Road, their mean speeds are all well under, even under the limits that you're proposing. I just think it's a waste of money, putting signs up, changing it for nothing. Rangiatia Road, it's pretty obvious that Mr. Hairfield's retired because he used to sit there all the time and police it, but no, I haven't seen a policeman there for a long time. So I just think we're just stirring up the community for nothing, really. But I do agree that we should be doing something with the schools, just some simple signs or sharp corners so they have to slow down. But even the accidents, it's there's most of them. There's been no incidents in the last 10 years. Ōtorohanga Road's probably the only outlier in that whole thing. It's had a couple of crashes, and that's a very busy road. So yeah, I keep it to your drive. I think it's crazy. They're only driving at 55k anyway on there. So why stop someone at 2 o'clock in the morning that wants to go 80k, which is what you do, because vehicles are GPS and they only can go certain speeds. Or yeah, so I'm not really supportive of it at all. But I am supportive of a variable speed limit at the schools. Then thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Is the law going to say that for some schools it's a permanently low speed? Certainly in the urban centres it will be, or is it variable in the country? What's the story?
It varies. We've made the decisions on what we know and all the information that we're given. So not all of our schools will be permanent. Some of them will be variable, and they're all noted in there as well. So we've just
I mean, for us, anybody going towards Te Awamutu, you look at Pokera school hours, obviously it's 60 kilometres an hour and the bright red light. And then when it's school holidays, you can go past here at 100 kilometres an hour.
that's what we're proposing as well.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, through your worship, you've just actually asked the question I was going to ask about the Pokera school. It's a very similar thing. As far as enforcement is concerned, these speed limits, I mean, some of these are way out in the country. The police being spoken to about whether they will enforce these limits, on a regular basis, or is it something just going to go by? I know that generally the police, especially in this area, are probably under-resourced to a certain degree on the highway patrol side of it. So just wonder whether there is going to be a real drive to get enforcement done on these speed limits, probably especially around school times, in and out, I suppose, would be more the go, wouldn't it? So it's police being consulted on this or not? Excuse me.
Please say Councillor Hughes, please. Yes, there's lots of consultation going on with police throughout the country. They're very, very involved with Road to Zero and speed management plans and on board with it. And where appropriate, they, at the beginning of term, they have a higher presence around the schools. We have officers here in town that do the urban schools, and where possible, they go out and patrol around, Korokanui, those ones, but not all the time. Like you said, they we are very under-resourced, they're very under-resourced at the moment. They will do what they can when they can.
Judge Muslim, Councillor Christensen.
It's a really cool, awesome report. I just got a couple of questions just to get my head around it. So Mahihi, there's two variable speeds, 60 and 40. So is 60 all the time? Like after, not in school hours, does it not go back to 100? Oh, then, okay, I sort of disagree with that. I do disagree with that one then, because it's a nice, fairly straight bit of road. And yeah. Ōtorohanga would probably be the same. You're dropping it to 60 all the time. And then it's got primary school is variable, so it goes back to 50. But then the college in St. Mary's is 30 all the time. They're both in built up areas. So I don't understand the rationale behind that.
What to say?
So the college in St. Mary's is 30 all the time.
Yep.
And then primary school is 30 variable. So it goes back to 50 out of school times. I don't understand why those two are different, because they're both in built up areas. Because if I heard right, it said that in town environments they had to stay dropped all the time, but you haven't done that for primary school. And then kotahi, QQ, we're doing all this work. What are they doing for our school?
They're working on.
They are? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that would be really good to put in the document that, because I think that will come up.
That's part of their, I think that was picked up in their Waikato interim speed management plan.
Yeah.
School, so.
Yeah, well, just for our people to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just
we have
those.
noted that that's what. Tahi-
Yeah, no, you have. Yeah, but it doesn't say that they're doing work on it or anything. So, yeah, but I just, mahihi, 60 all the time outside of school. I don't get the rationale behind that. Or Ōtorohanga, and then the three urban
It's
schools are
done.
different.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, Council. We've got it there, proposed lowering to 60 permanently with a variable of 40. And what, I think, would it be fair to say if it was I suppose, a reflection of what Poker is like, where it's its normal speed limit is 80, I think, through there now, with variable just through the school hours. Is that
100.
It's 100 through there.
100
It's
variable.
interesting speed limits like it's at 80 for quite a way out of Taumata, isn't it?
It's to the bridge.
For about
Yeah, but then it's
2 kilometres, possibly 1 kilometre.
Yeah, so now that's interesting. I think the other thing to rather than thinking of school hours in isolation, these are obviously places that are used outside of school hours too, which do bring people to those schools. So I think if that's the mood of the room for us to look at that again before we go out, that's something we can talk about now.
I think in terms of consistency for town market, it'd be worthwhile having that discussion. If you've got some schools that have permanently dropped to 30 and others are variable, all within the urban boundaries, it's got to be consistent. Otherwise, it's
So the
struggling.
primary school,
Right,
Right on the edge.
it's straight flat.
yeah,
Is that the reason?
so it's a 50 with a variable of 30 is it? Currently. Yeah. So, whereas in town, those schools in town are in the urban busy areas, so. So I mean, unless there's a real mood to want to change it, I think that the best way forward is we go out with the consultation document that's in front of us and see what.
With some changes, so,
The Ōtorohanga one.
and what about the schools, Ōtorohanga and Mahihi? Katrina was talking about 100, and then, I don't know, one of them's 40 and one of them's 30. Is it gonna be confusing having like some 40 and some 30?
It-
I'm sorry, I
It-
should have
it-
asked this question when I
so-
reviewed this report,
Yeah.
but should we make them all the same?
Well, I think if we've got a school, as councillor Hughes has mentioned, Pokeroo School has got a system already, which I assume has been approved. Is that something we should be adopting on our rural schools as well? So there is a level of consistency across the districts between us and Waipo. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's got to be consistent, Mark, because what we see, like, we've got it, and we talked about this yesterday as well, in my part, where they've got these little spots that are 80 kilometres an hour, and we drive around the country now going, shippers, what speed are we meant to be doing right here? And it becomes really, really problematic. So consistency is the key in the approach, certainly when it comes to the schools. When someone approaches a school in the countryside, they know this is the speed they should be driving. As opposed to, is this one 30 or 40 or 60? I'm not sure.
So you've got your standard speed limit, which is designated now, but during the school hours, the variable signs are activated, which says you're lowering the speed limit, which is what Pokeroo. So
Is Pukeru, is it 30 or 40?
Pokeroo 60.
Oh,
But they've also, the schools back up off the road, they've got a good driveway entrance out onto the road, they've got visibility both ways. And that's the difference between, some of our schools as well. So I have no issues if these schools on the variable ones are lower than what Pokeroo is, but it just needs to be consistent across the district.
okay. I think that's great discussion. So, yeah. And I think that's a change we can.
So are we changing? That is more we go into consultation.
No, I think what we're agreeing here, correct me if I'm wrong, is to try and have a consistency across Ōtorohanga district, ties into our very near neighbours, so that anyone that's travelling in this area has got a similar idea, so they're not trying to guess what speed limit they're in. So if we maintain the existing speeds outside of school hours, what the current speed limit is, but then we have the variables come in. Well, oh, correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, if there's a piece of law in there that I haven't caught up that says different, we probably need to have that discussion. Yeah, like if Pokeroo schools existing already in the same scenario, I can't imagine one going. Yeah.
Every school is different.
Yeah.
So we need to make plans that suit those particular schools.
Yeah, I understand.
Can't be making just standard. These are all being done.
It'd be all good if all our schools in school hours were 40. I mean, there's not an issue with that, but it's the 60, it's the 80, it's 40, it's 30. They're all, and I get what you're saying, Rachel, is that they're all different, but if we wanted consistency, let's lower them all right down during school hours and then go back to normal outside of school hours, because I mean, I know Ottawa and Mahi, they don't actually get kids walking there on the weekends, like, because that's when I mow their lawn, so I sort of know. Yeah,
But during the day, they cross the road to the park and they do swimming and they do sport across there and they have cross country during.
yeah, and that's school hours, so that could be lower speed then. Yeah, totally agree.
Which is just a matter of activating the variables, isn't it? Yeah, so I think I've got a really good understanding of what the route's saying, so. Yeah. No,
We've got some suggested resolutions.
we make
If people are ready to hear them, and we can go from there and wordsmith them if we need to, eh? So, resolve that Ōtorohanga District Council approve the draft interim speed management plan for public consultation from 1st of June to 30th of June 2023 with the following amendments. Inclusion of an option for Ōtorohanga Road with 50-kilometre proposed speed limit ending 1.2 kilometres north of Kakamutu Road. B, all urban schools to be consistent with a 30k, 50k variable speed limit. And all rural schools to be consistent with a 60-kilometre, 100-kilometre variable speed limit.
The urban ones wasn't variable for the reasons that you said that the kids are going there during the day, holidays, and other hours.
Yep, cool. We're just, putting it out there and
And
then you
also-
comment
yeah.
on it and tell us what we'd.
And
need to
also,
change.
I think that the rural schools probably needs to be lower to accommodate for the ones that are closer to the road, so it's in line with what Rachel's saying.
But outs.
Yep, no, that's fine. We're going with the Pōkuru kind of alignment, but if that's not right, then is it 40? And just remind me what the school, explain to me what the school, urban school one was?
The schools within, within the confines of the community, the students are still going there outside of school hours to play basketball, tennis, sports, whatever. Yeah.
That's urban.
Rural, urban. sorry.
Urban, so we're dropping them permanently to
Yeah,
30.
the urban.
No
schools,
variable.
As per the assessment.
30
the
kilometre
lowering
per
30.
hour.
The rural schools, we maintain a standard that the existing speed limit outside of school hours with a variable sign to reduce it during school hours or other school events, I imagine. I'm not sure how you can turn the signs on and off, but someone must turn them on and off. So, yeah, does that make sense?
Oh, I thought I had something. So with the variables on all the rural schools, the costs are enormous of putting them in. And that's why we have put permanent signs to lower the costs. And we've done that on the roads that the speed are already low anyway. So that's why we've put permanents in to help cut the costs. Because the variable ones, the maintenance and that.
Okay, we're going out for consultation on something. I think leave cost out of this at this stage, because if you put a permanent sign in there and it's outside of school hours, I can guarantee you one thing: nobody in the rural communities are going to abide by that 40 kilometre speed. They're going to go through there at 60 or 70. The habits will get formed. At least when they know that it's school hours, they'll actually drop their speed.
Yeah, I agree. That's good way forward. Thank you.
Is that
Any
sorry, through you, Richard, sorry. So when we say school hours, we mean the whole time the school's in, like Pokeru's not like that. It's basically those signs come on at certain times in the morning and then through the middle part
I
of the
think
day.
it'll be at the discretion of the schools, I think, Steve, because like Pokaru they have no reason to be going
Yeah.
across road or out outside of collection drop-off times, where the likes of Mahihi and that could be crossing the road.
Yeah.
So if the school chooses to activate because this kid's going to cross the road, then they'll turn it on.
Yeah, okay.
We're not defining when in the resolution.
No. But I think each school will be slightly bespoke. So.
And the
but
consultation
that's not in this.
may pull out, Rachel, that all the residents out there want it dropped permanently. But we start with a point which can at least create discussion. So what are we on?
I'm not keen on the urban one. Then I say basically past the college, it's 30k all year round, 365 days a year. Anyway, street.
So consultation will see whether that's acceptable or not.
But that one street in the Ōtorohanga urban area will be 30k's, or two streets.
Yeah.
And every other street will be 50k. It'll be
No
like,
problem, drive around another way if you don't want
it'll be
to.
like Waipā, seeing the 7
You
different
don't
bloody
want to-
speed things within a few k's, like.
What's
it's
nearest
ridiculous.
school? The nearest school.
Okay, recommendations. We have. Yeah, please read it again.
Needy.
Thank you.
I'm gonna acronym things. That ODC approved the draft interim speed management plan for public consultation from 1st of June to 30th of June with the following amendments: inclusion of an option for Ōtorohanga Road with a 50 kilometre proposed speed limit ending 1.25 k's north of Kakamutu Road. B, all urban schools to be consistent with a 30 kilometre an hour speed limit. C, all rural schools to be consistent with a 40 kilometre an hour / 100 kilometre an hour variable speed limit.
Thank you, Tanya. I'd like to move those recommendations. Do we have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Christensen, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Do you want to record it? Yeah, good. Thank you. Item 46, financial report for the month ending 30th of April 2023. Welcome, Brendan.
My agenda gone. Right. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'm here to present the financial report to the end of April. Excuse me. Moving straight on to the comprehensive revenue and expenses. So we're just under $4 million of net surplus at the end of April. Against a budget of 3.1. So our revenue's down. Oh, page 160. Cool. So our operating revenue is down about 1.2 to 1.3 million dollars on year-to-date budget, mostly due to the subsidies and grants and the other income. So similar to every other month when I present this, it's a timing issue around the claims. So we're currently in the process of doing the claim to the end of April to Wakagatai. Karma is actually working on it at this point in time. So that'll come through. There'll probably be 200,000 or 300,000 there. Maybe even a bit more actually. And then the regulatory income, that's timing issue around budgeting as well, just when we think we're going to get regulatory income for building consents and resource consents, try and budget for the year when we think we'll get it, but obviously these things are cyclical and up and down, so you can never actually truly budget that well. Operating expenses were 2.1 million down on budget. Again, employee benefit expenses being just under $1 million of that, and other expenses being 1.2. Part of that 1.2 being the 600,000 for the Ōtorohanga town concept plan that we put aside for some projects that were going to happen in this current year. On to the next page, the statement of financial position or the balance sheet. So we're looking healthy again with total current assets of 4.1 million against total current liabilities of 2.3, which gives us working capital of $1.8 million. So again, the large reason why that's quite high is because the rates go out. Second installment in January, we get a lot of that money in by the end of February. So our bank balance is high and slowly comes down over the rest of the year to get towards the end of the year at June. And over the last page, the combined cost service statement. Excuse me. Operating revenue is $3 million under budget. So again, this is basically the same things as the income statement. It's to do with our timing of the subsidy claims and stuff like that, and the other general sources, which is our internal charging for staff costs. So because we're down on staff costs, as was mentioned in the income statement, that means that the recoveries we get from that staff charging their time out is obviously down as well. In terms of the operating expenditure, so we're about 4.4 million there. That's spread all over the place. All the activities are under in some respect. Part of that will again be to do with the employee costs, and so there's less charges going into those activities. And then part of it is, as I point out there, there's asset maintenance and staff vacancies, which I just talked about. And in terms of the capital expenditure, so we're about $8.8 million under budget there. As I said, there's some items that are currently out for tender, like the wastewater contract, about $3 million. We talked about earlier, there was another, it's about 2.4 million of roading work that was going to be carried over to next year, particularly the minor improvements, I believe, or what used to be called minor improvements, now low risk, low cost. And some other costs as well. We budgeted some stuff, for example, some of the work we're going to do in the Arahina with water supply that we carried over this year, we're not actually doing now, so it's budget that we're not going to spend. So that's part of that 8.8 as well. And so that's my report. If there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. It's probably, I won't say one of the more confusing ones, but it's one of the most challenging financial reports to look at because nothing seems to align. And we know we're coming near the end of a financial year, and we know now that it's not going to all of a sudden just magically fit together and walk with this beautiful equation at the end of it. So obviously there's issues with procurement, there's issues with contracts, there's issues with everything that seems to be going on. I'd imagine you talk with other councils. Is this the general feel across councils at the moment?
I know in the procurement type area, yes, a lot of councils are also dealing with these issues. Obviously inflation is also having an impact on other councils in terms of contracts coming back a lot more than, or tenders coming back at more than maybe they budgeted for. Which may mean that they're not going out, they're not actually accepting those tenders in some cases. Yeah, I don't know if Mark's going to add to that.
Yeah, Mark, just interesting because I mean, it's, yeah, I said this is probably the more challenging one I've seen of all the years I've been on council in terms of contracts that haven't been done at the end of the financial year or don't look like they're going to be done at the end of the financial year. Is that a big part of discussion amongst, I suppose, the shared services entities and so on, about how we address this and get contracts done probably in a timely manner? Or is it just something we just have to sweat out? Because it makes it very hard for you guys to set budgets when it's nothing's really aligning at the end of the financial.
Yeah, I understand. I think probably the one significant difference with this LTP is we chose some pretty ambitious projects and we're not out of that 3-year project time span yet. So some of the projects, for example, that wastewater upgrades, it's taken a considerable amount of time even to get to out to tender to then receive it. So at this stage, I'm not sure which, I'm coming to the end of this conversation, so I'm not sure what contracts we're talking about.
And not specifics, we're not talking specifics,
Yeah.
and we don't need to talk specifics
So, yes.
because we've undertaken to
Yeah.
bring capital project reports regularly to council. We've been bringing them quarterly for next financial year, and with Robbie now in the project manager projects role, you're going to see them monthly again, because I believe in our final year of our LTP with financials that look like this, where you need to be across things every month, like the financial report and the capital projects report. So
Sorry, yeah, Mark, you did walk into the end of it. It's just at 0.5, like capital expenditure and loan repayments are under budget by 8.8 million. Now for a council of our size, 8.8 million, so a hell of a lot of money. And it's just, and I appreciate that you talk about an LTP cycle and so on. So whether some projects have been put into a particular financial year where they should have been left for another year, or we've just got ahead of ourselves, etc.
I think that number's probably not a true reflection. I think it's just a snapshot in time, given that we are coming up, this is end of April. We've just had the reseals completed, the rehabs have almost finished. We're installing a $1 million water line at the moment. That'll be finished by the end of June. So there's a whole, it's really not a real accurate reflection. Brendan and I did talk about that number earlier and some back calculations. We thought, well, it's actually not that bad. It'd be good to put that number down. But yeah, so I think next month it will look a lot different. But the reality is some of these contracts can change at a phone call. And I've had a similar conversation this morning where I might be looking at a 12-week delay on a contract. So we start off with good forecasting. Sometimes we can't control things, so that I don't think that number's a true reflection of where we're going to be coming in this financial.
Look, and I appreciate it as well. At least the same make them aid under budget, not over budget. So that is a good start. But I suppose if you look at if I was Joe Public and they're reading this agenda and they look through this, they'd be going, what the hell's going on? This council, I get it, and there's an explanation behind every story. It's just, it's very hard to get your head around where things are.
I agree, and I think as Tanya has said, our capital project reporting is going to be far more regular and accurate going into the next financial year. We've got a dedicated staff there.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No, thank you, Brendan. It's all come together. So we have the staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council received the report titled Financial Report for the month ending 30th of April 2023 from Brendan. Move on a second for those, please. with councillor Dow, second councillor Johnson, all in favour? Against, carried. Thank you. Moving on to, thanks Brendan. Moving on to item 47, long-term plan 24 to 34, Ōtorohanga District environmental scan. Ross. Is Anne zooming in on this one or is it? Cheers. Good morning, Anne. No, you're still on mute.
You're on
Anne.
mute.
Kia ora koutou. My mistake.
Your worship, perhaps I'll introduce, so Anne has prepared the report and the environmental scan document. She can't be here with us today, so between Anne and I, we'll deliver the item. We had intended earlier this morning in a workshop session to take you through the environmental scan, but a change of items meant that wasn't possible. So what we'd like to do, rather than just jump straight into the report, is to take you through what the environmental scan is, why it's important, how it underpins the long-term plan process. So between Anne and I, Anne will talk to the presentation and I will step through the presentation. So and then we'll take questions. I'm sure we can take questions as we go. And then perhaps move to the report itself and go from there. So thank you.
Thanks, Ross. So what I'm going to do is just very brief. I will only very briefly take you through this because I realise it's a long document. But probably the thing I need to say beforehand is I need to humbly apologise for some of the typos in the report. My apologies for the spelling of kawhia. It was a real brain fade on my part.
Thank you, Anne. Kawhai didn't quite look right.
Yes, so I do apologise for that. We will make that right. So I thought I'd start by just quickly running over what an environmental scan is. So in its simplest terms, it's basically about the context in which you're preparing your long-term plan. So it looks at trends and events that might be affecting the district. It looks to identify some challenges and opportunities and provide some objective and evidential base for the work that you're doing. Now, I guess one of the big things that we need to stress here is that when your long-term plans are basically outward-facing documents, so they are when you're preparing one, you need to be thinking about the much bigger picture. And hence that the reason for some of the structure that we've chosen. Just scrolling down, Ross. So this next picture just shows where the environmental scans fits in. Now, I know that you've actually seen all this before, and you'll probably get very sick of this diagram because it'll come up again and again. Just to try and give you some navigation about where you are in the process. So still very much at that early stage. You've had a talk about direction and where you've been, and the environmental scan, if you like, is kind of sitting around that work. Okay, next slide, please, Ross. So why do we do it? Basically, it's not required by legislation per se. But you'll see that it's still a very necessary and expected part of the process, because one of the things that is required by legislation is that you are taking that much wider view and taking into account the things that are happening within the wider environment and bringing that into your planning. So it helps you take that outward look, and hopefully it identifies key issues early in the process. and ensures that your long-term plan is up to date as possible. And as we said earlier, it provides basically for informed decision making. Okay, so in terms of the structure of the document, I realise that it's a lot of pages to get through. So what we've tried to do as much as possible is bring most of the information to the front of the document. So you've got a summary there, which just talks about the progress that you've made to date and some of the challenges and opportunities that could be ahead of you over the next 3 to 10 years. The next section has a look at the international and national context in which your work is being done. And I guess one of the really hard things right at the moment is how much change is just going on. And that was really evident in actually just trying to write that section, because there's just been so much fluidity, even since just the beginning of this year. It then drills down into some of the regional trends that are occurring. So it puts you within the context of the wider Waikato, and then focuses in on more Ōtorohanga centric information. And supporting information is just contained in the appendices. So hopefully it'll also act as a bit of a resource for information that you might want to check on later. Okay, thanks, Ross. I've just pulled out some of the key trends and challenges that have been identified and broken them into that social, economic and environmental areas. So the first one there, under social, I mean, you've already been talking about some of these things in terms of the issues around a lot of the social cohesion that's difficult at the moment, and the need to rebuild trust. One of the things that you've seen very gradually is that you've got population growth in Ōtorohanga, and we're expecting that growth is likely to continue, albeit gradually. The other thing that you will be very aware of is that you have a very large rural population, and this reinforces the importance of resilient infrastructure and access to key services. I think for most of us, climate change is definitely something that's been exercising everybody's mind very recently. So one of the key messages that all of us are really thinking about at the moment is the fact that extreme weather events are likely to be regular. And obviously, specifically, when thinking about coastal communities, that the piece of the West Coast that falls within the district is one of those areas that is vulnerable to these things. Some of the other environmental issues that are sort of top of mind at the moment, the release of the government's new waste strategy, and obviously that's going to have an effect on some of the services that are delivered by council. The other thing I've pulled out there is there was some research, albeit several years old now, but research relating to environmental attitudes across the region. And one of the things that really does sort of stand out there is the value that those who were interviewed for that work within the district, the value that they actually placed on the environment. Okay, next one. Thank you, Ross. I guess, like climate change, the other thing that's exercising everybody's mind at the moment is around growth and the growth predictions for the future. And again, this is there is a lot of murkiness in this area. But the expectation at this stage is that we're going to have continued negative growth into 2024. And obviously, the rising cost of living is something that's exercising people's minds at the moment. specifically for the district, there is some disparity in terms of economic growth and the the average earnings that if you take New Zealand as a whole. So I guess one of the concerns for this district is around not falling behind the rest of the country in terms of that where it sits.
And I'm not sure if I meant to ask questions as you're going, but I'm going to.
Okay.
The disparity between the district economic growth you're talking about and average earnings in New Zealand, like it's pretty sad reading when you read your environmental scan there and it says that Ōtorohanga is going backwards while the rest of the country is going forward. How is that measured?
So that was taken from some material or the latest information from Infometrics, and I would need to just go back specifically to that. So it's based on average income. So again, thinking about the nature of the population that you have in this district too, and the fact that there will be potentially some people who are in the older and the younger age groups, and that will actually have an influence there. Yeah, so it's measured on that average income.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last one I've got there is impact of cost escalation, supply chain issues, labour shortages, and increasing inflation. So in terms of, I think probably most work that is being done at the moment, I mean, you see it particularly in the building industry, there's a lot of, it's difficult to be able to predict, when materials coming into the country. The labour shortages are creating problems, and you're seeing that costs are difficult to actually nail down right at the moment. So all the work that we do is within that context. So the last one I put there, just under the heading of general, is really the huge amount of uncertainty that's that we're all facing at the moment. And this is in relation to both what government is planning. So, we've had quite a big reform program. We see that changing. And I think the other thing that's really been evident very much is the changing priorities as well. So, over this 3-year period, we've actually seen a big change, and we're seeing a big change going into this next budget. And then obviously one of the things that's happening right now is that we are also moving into that pre-elect, it's an election year. We're starting to move into that election phase. And so as we prepare this plan, there will be quite a lot of uncertainty as we go into the latter part of this year and the early part of next year. Okay. So you've already done some work around thinking about what the direction might be for this next plan. And you've had a talk about, are we on the right journey? And I guess one of the things that you've come back with saying is, yes, the importance of connecting with the community. We want to continue that. We think it's still really important to press forward with making Ōtorohanga an even better place to live, and partnerships and nurturing and growing those, particularly with the influencers and the shapers of the district, is really important. But that needs to be done within, there's some areas that you want to be able to potentially step up in, or do more of, or throw a lens over the work that you're doing to make sure that there's continued resilience, that the sustainability lens gets applied to the work that we're doing, and that you continue that process of transformation to improve delivery and position yourself for the future. So what happens next? So now, because you've done that preliminary work, where we've got the environmental scan. One of the jobs now is for the organisation to go back and throw that lens, if you like, over the plans and the documents that they've got in terms of setting out what programs had been intended for the future, and the the activities and the projects that are in the current LTP, and look to see what needs to basically be what needs to change within that, in terms of what had originally been planned, what needs to be added, and what maybe needs to be taken away. So that those changes and any new work needs to be come back and workshop with you as council, with then to be going out potentially a little bit later this year, and hopefully dovetailing in with some of the other consultation work that you're doing, to have an early conversation with the community about the key directions and the key planks for this next long-term plan. Okay, and I think that, right, okay, couple of just final comments. As we work through this process, there'll be new information that's will surface. I think the point has been stressed frequently with you about the importance of nimbleness and the need to be able to revise some of the assumptions that we might be making with regard to this plan, and the approach that we might be taking to particular issues. It is very much a fluid scene out there at the moment. So the intention is that at this stage, you receive the scan as a piece of information, with the view to later adopting a revised version, because it's a living document, we will update it as it goes, once you've got your complete LTP package together, so that you adopt it at that point. Okay, anything I've missed, Ross, that you want to stress?
No, Ian, I think you've covered it pretty well, but perhaps it's an opportunity now for members to ask questions.
Cool. Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, it's funny, at the beginning you said there's no legislative requirement to do an environmental scan, and you kind of wonder why, because that is really wonderful reading. It gave us a great overview of where we are as a council, what we need to be doing as a council, what's happening in our district. And I think for anybody, it's a really, really good read to give us a clear understanding of what's going on. So thank you for the work that you've put into this, and really looking forward to a final version down the track. And as I said, I wonder why it's not a legislative requirement to have an environmental scan. So thank you. Any questions, councillors?
Just a comment. I'd just like to congratulate you, Anne. I think it's a really good report, and well written, and easy to read. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's puts in a nutshell a lot of the things that we're trying to improve the district. Particularly the being a more community focused council. I love that. And from infrastructure to well-being, that's it's sort of where we're heading. We're not just all about roads and rubbish these days, are we? So
yeah, no, thank you for that.
Thanks. Well, good. No further questions.
Just if I could
Yeah.
comment through you, Your Worship, just Anne touched on this. So as she said, the next part of the process is basically kind of taking the microscope to everything we're doing at the moment, and just checking in to make sure that we still want to keep doing some of the things that we're doing. We don't want to amend some of them, stop doing them, enhance or accelerate, or really kind of pull some things up to the top as priorities. So it's a real opportunity for us to look at all the service services we deliver, both internally as well as by contract through other agencies. All right, so I just kind of want to put that out there because I know there's been some questions about, you know, will we get an opportunity to look at all our funding that we allocate to external organisations or service level agreements? The answer is yes. This is our time to ask the question, you know, if we're adopting the strategic direction and we understand our environmental scan, what's kind of coming at us, etc., as much as we can crystal ball gaze that, then it's just an ideal time for us to do a bit of a, you know, look across everything that we're doing, whether it's us directly delivering that or another agency or organisation. Okay, so yeah, you will be part of that.
Well, thanks, Tanya. And I think what this here does is actually gives us the opportunity to reflect on what we're doing, what we're meant to be doing, or what we think we want to be doing. So yeah, it's really, really good. So on that, we have the recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council receive the Ōtorohanga District Environmental Scan. Do I have a mover and a second of that, please? Councillor Johnson, Councillor Prendergast, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Ross.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Anne.
Kia kite.
Right. Moving on to other business, which is councillor updates, and we'll start with Councillor Johnson.
Not too much except to go to the dawn parade on Anzac Day and coronation tree planting. It was yeah, really interesting, and thanks to Katrina for her input with that. It was really good. And just have to say there's been a lovely bit of resealing up Ōtorohanga Road. So thanks to the roading team for that. So that's my lot.
Thank you. Councillor Prendergast.
Much the same as Councillor Johnson, very quiet month. The Country Development Trust meeting has been put back about 3 times, and it's now happening tomorrow night, and that will include a strategy session, which is really good. Looking forward to that. I attended the King's Coronation tree planting, really nice, and nice to meet some of the identities of the characters of the community. Yeah, so that's me for the month.
Kia ora. Yeah, no, I have had a relatively quiet month. Yes, attended the tree planting, so that was quite a interesting little affair, but that was cool. Kura iwi, attended a hui with kura iwi around localised curriculum and how we can potentially put some framework into how te ao Māori can be implemented into kura, primary school, secondary, and early childhood centres. Attended the iwi chair forum in Rotorua around the Māori coming back here to Maniapoto. So Waikato Maniapoto will host the next iwi chair forum, which is in August this year, and I think it should be quite a interesting hui around many of our rohe now in post settlement for from the Crown. So I am envisioning a invitation will go out to you, your worship, and others who may want to attend, and that will be held at Apakura campus or in Te Awamutu. And basically it's just a time for those lovely little words, engagement iwi Māori, hence the kupu iwi, that you can see some faces, you can make some connection, you can hear what's happening in their supposed areas. So right from the far north to the bottom of the south. So that should be quite an interesting hui. And kapahaka within our space in Maniapoto has kicked off with our secondary schools well into training. And again, an invitation will be shared out to the rohe around tautoko ngā rangatahi o Apopo, or our leaders of tomorrow, on the 14th of July at Glowbox in Hamilton. Also the day before Ngā Manu Kōrero, also listening to our orators of Māori speaking, English speaking, as well as an addition of a Pacific Island category to be brought into that mix, and that is Aotearoa Waitu, so that is from all across New Zealand. And then what else have I done? No, just be a mum and a nana. Amihi.
Sorry, I didn't mention earlier, I actually did have a luncheon with my two neighbouring mayors. And it went really, really well. We talked about the projects that we could potentially work on across boundaries, and waste minimisation was one of them. And where that's led to is the moment Day is organising with the other EAs to get all the councillors together, and probably within the next 4 weeks anyway. So, and the first meeting will just be a catch up, really, just to get to know each other, who we are, what we represent, where we're from. And then we're looking at that being a regular ongoing program, and it could be the likes of bringing government ministers in to talk to the collective group of elected members and so on. So thank you, Councillor Christensen.
It's music to my ears. Thank you. I did some community board training this month, Anzac parade, tree planting, development board meetings, community board meeting, and just it's been a lovely week in Adelaide, but it wasn't that warm. But it was warmer than here. Because it was raining here.
Thank you, Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, I'll have a quiet one too. Just went to the Anzac Dawn Parade. Then a couple of weekends ago, our whole family got together and celebrated 60 years in business for Ōtorohanga Transport. So we did it pretty low key. Not sure we're going to do something later on, but who knows. And then yesterday, actually, I attended a regional transport committee meeting. Because we're in a workshop. Sorry, no, yeah, it's a workshop because they're on a plan, a long-term plan. It's interesting, the whole plan has been tipped upside down. Like the last long-term plan was all about growth. This and resilience was kind of at the bottom. Now it's resilience at the top and growth, like no one's worrying about it so much. So, but yeah, so resilience is the key word here. But yeah, so that's what I've been up to. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Your Worship. 20th April, I attended the community board training along with Councillor Christensen. Very interesting. The two facilitators there were very knowledgeable. Learned quite a bit through that. It was actually very well done. Tree planting again on the 6th, which Councillor Johnson and I managed to drag our wives along to, with the promise of a cup of tea afterwards, basically. And yesterday was the community board meeting here. So other than that, that's all we've got.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Moving on to Tanya, the resolutions register.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I need some help, people, sorry. Ross, I've just asked you, has C18 been taken care of? I'm gonna have to get better at asking my VMs to give me advice on these, because it's a bit hard for me to stay across all the detail and put my hand on my heart and say, yes, it's all been done. Good, so that one can come off. It just didn't have, this can come off the resolutions register, so I wasn't quite sure. Okay, that's cool. The next one, I've got nothing else. Town concept, well, we haven't appointed a project coordinator yet, so I guess that one stays on, yeah. Yeah. Next one stays, C32 stays, and we've, yeah, that one can come off. We said that, and the C51 can come off. So we'll take C18 and C51 off. Thank you.
Ai, tēnā tātou whakakapi o tātou hui te ata nei. And ngami e o hoa kesri e tuwhira i te rā. Kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou ari ki au Karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga teitanga, ki te